Welcome to the Married People Podcast, where we help you make marriage real, fun, and simple. Each week, we have honest conversations about one simple thing that can make your marriage better. Because when your marriage is better, everything's better. I'm CJ, and sitting around the table today, we have our resident newlywed, Afton.
Hi.
And we have our 23-year marriage veteran. He's an author, speaker, and the director of marriedpeople.org, Ted Lowe.
Hey, everybody.
And for the first time this week, we're also joined by Dave Adamson, also known as Aussie Dave, for a reason you're about to find out.
G'day, guys.
You did that on
I
purpose.
totally did that. Get on down to the Outback for our signature sirloin.
I love this better already.
And we are thrilled to have Dave on with us today because we're talking about how technology and social media impacts our marriage. And we're excited, not just because Dave has an accent that's going to make all of us sound a little bit better.
And he's got a really cool wedding ring. Tell him about that.
Yeah, yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, I have my wife's name tattooed across my wedding finger. Is it the wedding finger?
Wedding finger?
Wedding
Yeah, that's what
band
we say
finger.
here. The wedding finger.
Yeah, her name's tattooed there because I actually lost 3 wedding bands. Ooh. I lost one when I was surfing. It fell off, gone forever. I lost one. I was playing in a cover band, playing guitar in a cover band. In a pub, I took it off to put it on to my amp, and somebody stole it. And then the third one I lost around the house. I said, you know what? I'm going to get your name tattooed on my finger. And she said, go for it.
You know, 2 of those 3 are very, very cool. The last one's something more that, you know, I dropped my ring down the drain.
True.
But I commend you for having 2 really good stories that
They're
you've
good.
lost your wedding ring. You know, surfing, playing in a cover band. Like, those are...
I don't think your ring is supposed to come off that easily. Maybe your ring size is too big.
Well, now it never comes off. That's the good
Tattoo,
news.
yes,
Yes.
that
And this was the
never
most
leaves.
painful tattoo I have. Like, my wife
Because
took it.
the commitment was
Right.
just like, oh.
Because you're getting a tattoo on your finger. A, B, it goes into the webbing of your fingers. And so my wife took a photo of me while I was having this done. And literally you can see the vein in my forehead is popped up. The vein in my neck is popped up. I'm sweating profusely. And I had flip-flops on. And so I had them off and my toes were curled up. And she thinks it's the best photo ever. So it was actually all about the commitment.
We should
Yeah,
post it in
all
our
about
show
commitment.
notes.
Yeah.
We need that photo for our show notes.
I'll find it and we'll do that.
Well, we are really excited, not just because Dave has an accent and has a very cool tattoo, but because Dave is a former TV sports reporter from Australia, and he currently serves as the social media pastor. Yes, that's right, social media pastor for North Point Community Church here in the Atlanta area. So, Dave, tell us a little bit about what is a social media pastor? What does that look like? Because that is one of the reasons why you're here today, because you are a social media expert.
Well, yeah, it was about, I think 3 or 4 years ago now that I went into a meeting with our lead pastor, Andy Stanley. Some of you may have
No
heard
idea
of
who
him.
that is.
And because I had actually started at North Point as a media producer, I was creating all the 1-minute videos that happen. If you watch Andy's messages, you see he does a 1-minute video so that they can clear all the stuff off the stage and he can get himself ready. And I was producing those 1-minute videos. And at North Point, you do a 3-month evaluation where you're it's not them evaluating you, it's you evaluating North Point. And they always tell me that Andy reads them. And I was like, yeah, I don't think he reads them. So I wrote all this stuff about how bad the social media was. And 2 weeks later, I get an invite from Andy to meet in his office. And I honestly, like, true story, I thought I was about to get fired. And he sits down at the table, and Andy is...
It's like the principal's office.
I was taken to the principal's office. And he's a really good asker of questions. Like, he's just surgical in the way he does that. And he sits down at the table. I was already sitting there very nervous. And he sits down with my printed out evaluation. And most of it was highlighted. And his first words were, well, it looks like we've got a lot to talk about today. And I'm honestly like, oh my gosh, I'm about to get fired. But turns out, no, he just wanted to know what a social media strategy was. He said, I know what social media is. I know what a strategy is. I don't know what a social media strategy is. And from the end of that conversation, he said, you're changing jobs. You're now over social media. So that's how it started.
So what does that look like as a social media pastor? What does that mean you're actually doing from week to week?
Yeah, so it's beyond social media. I deal with a lot of the people who connect with our church digitally. In the current age, social media is the front door of your church. People will connect. Yeah. People connect with your church before they connect within your church, and most of the time they do that through social media. So they're not looking up on. Nobody moves to the Atlanta area, goes to a website and looks up North Point Community Church. They do go to Facebook, they do go to Instagram and look up local churches in the area. And so we want to make sure that A, we've got a great presence there, B, that we're involved in the community and connecting with people, and C, that we're just helping people connect with us on social media, that we're connecting them to our other digital environments, whether that's our YouTube page, whether that's on-demand messages or our live stream, and then eventually, hopefully, leading them to visiting our church.
Yeah, wow.
That doesn't seem like a real job, Dave.
You don't seem like a real podcast host.
Well, you're probably right.
It's true. We don't have any idea what we're doing
It's
here.
funny, since I took that position on, though, a lot of larger churches, including one in the Oklahoma area, I don't want to give their name away. Should I give their name away?
Give it away.
I'll give you the initials, Life Church. They actually reached out, and they've since hired a social media pastor as well, reached out to me to find out what sort of things they should be asking and everything. So it's actually become a little bit of a thing.
Yeah.
And I guess in the modern era, it has to, because social media is everywhere. We're all on it. Mm-hmm. We all connect with people via social media or via some sort of digital medium. And, I would argue that, in the US, church attendance is declining, right? Most studies would say that. I always say it's not declining, it's decentralizing. In that people don't have to go to church anymore to get the content. What they need to go to church for is to get the community, get connected into small groups. But at North Point, we have people who are in a small group and who serve, but who never sit through a message. They watch the message online, they listen to the podcast, they watch it on demand, or they watch it on YouTube. But they're still in a small group and talk about the same things. They still serve in a ministry in the church or something like that, and they still give to our church. So, just the world has changed.
Yeah. And that's a great, transition into, what we're talking about today, which is how does technology and social media impact our marriages? Because as social media and phone and technology use increases, it's going to play a bigger part in our marriages. And we were, sitting around here earlier, Afton and Ted and I, and we were just Googling some of those stats. And it's just, we found that, most adults will spend upwards of 2 hours a day on social media. And and chances are you're doing a lot of that in your off time. Yep. And that's a lot of your off time is with your spouse sitting next to you. So if we think those 2 hours a day isn't doing anything to our marriages, I think we're deceiving ourselves. Yeah. And so that's kind of what we want to dive into today. So I guess maybe a good first place to start is...
Are you married, Dave?
Yeah.
Perfect place to start. Let's go there.
Well, you've lost your wedding ring 3 times. So maybe a question is, are you still married?
Am I still married? Yes, I am. I am still married. I've been married for 22 years to Meg. She is absolutely amazing, but social media does impact our lives probably more than the average person because my job is in social media. I have to be on my phone or on my computer, and a lot of times I'm looking at Twitter, I'm looking at Facebook, and even our kids will say, Dad's not doing real work. He's on social media. Yeah. But I'm like, well, that is my real work. My kids are 14, 15, and 17, all girls. So please be praying for me because, Lord, social media is just destroying them. So it does impact, and it's not just social media, it's technology in general, right? But I think I see it's got the ability to either be a wedge between us or bring us closer together, depending on how we choose to use it. On any given day, at any given moment. Like I can leverage technology to contact my wife in ways that I couldn't 20 years ago when we first got married. At the same time, Netflix can bring us together because we will literally lock ourselves in our bedroom for a weekend and just binge watch the entire season of The Ozarks or Newsroom or something like that. And we only come out during breaks to get food and drink. Now I don't know what our kids think we're doing, but technology is actually bringing us together in those moments. But at the same time, when I come to bed at night and Meg's been in bed for an hour and I see the glow from her side of the bed, I know that this is not a good thing in our marriage right now because she's preferring to be on that.
So why is that? Why isn't that a good thing at that point?
Because it can create a separation. Instead of her and I talking to end our day, she's on social media, but then I'm on social media as well, and we've got our backs to each other. And then I flick mine off and go to sleep, and she flicks hers off and goes to sleep, rather than, just get an opportunity to wind down together.
Yeah. So Ted Afton, so what's your experience? Do you two feel that tension in your relationship with your spouse, especially, I guess, since we're there, like toward the end of the day? Or is that something that, no, it's just we're fine with it. That's part of our natural rhythm. We both lay on our sides and scroll for a few minutes and then go to sleep, and it's just our routine.
It's not an issue because Hudson and I are just tweeting back and forth to each other while we're in. I'm just kidding. No, we don't really do that. We actually started we charge our phones in a different room. So when we go into our room to go to bed, we put our phones in the guest room and they charge in there because it actually is not helpful to go to sleep. I didn't do it because of any relational reasons. We did it because I'm like, I feel like my brain isn't shutting down before I'm supposed to go to bed and I can't sleep. So we started putting devices in different rooms to help us sleep better.
Yeah.
But it does help you relationally too, because then you when you're going to bed, you talk to each other. That's all there is to do.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So for us, we've got 3 teenagers too, Dave. So you can be praying for us too. Totally. Two for one prayer on that one. I think what we've tried to do with our kids is we can't be on them all the time if we're telling them not to be. And so that's they've held us accountable by us trying to hold them accountable, I think.
Yeah.
And part of their thing is, there's definitely times we let them stay on there and we're on them as well. But if we're as a family, we'll be like, okay, give me your phones. And it is honestly, it's like, give me your 2 eye teeth. Every time. It never is like, we do this every time. And every time I get this, I cannot believe you were the worst dad ever. But then they interacting with us. But I think it's the same thing with us. We're pretty conscious about it, but we're older too.
We so we have a rule in our house that all phones get turned off at 8:00, and all phones get charged in our room. So we kind of do the opposite after what you said. But for us, we used to charge our phones down in the kitchen, but we found that one of our daughters would get up at 1 in the morning and go down and start texting with her friends and so we stumbled onto this for a whole bunch of other reasons, but we stumbled onto it and we said, well, now we're going to start doing this. And what that means is we have access, your parents have access to your phone, which is got to be okay because we're paying for them. And so we have a couple of rules in our house. One is 8:00, all phones up on charge. The second rule is every device in our house has exactly the same password. So that means that at any given time, I can get any of my girls' phones and open up their phones and scroll through it. And that at the same time, they can do the same to me. And my girls have done that. They've grabbed my phone. And I tell you what, if I'm working on it and they grab my phone and get into it and I go, whoa, what are you doing? They get to, well, Dad, what are you looking at? What's been going on? Because we see them do that. Yeah. So we've got a couple of rules like that. We also have a rule of Friday night till Saturday night, cell phone free, it's a device free zone, our whole house. It's kind of like a technology Sabbath, I guess.
We do that too.
Oh, really?
No technology Sunday.
Yeah. We call it no technology Friday night, Saturday. So it
I think mine's catchier.
Doesn't roll off the tongue.
Name.
Yeah.
No technology Friday or Saturday.com is available though if you ever want it. So we have that technology Sabbath, and my kids, they are on it. If I'm just going to grab my phone to listen to some music. No, you can't do that. It's technology free. So we have rules in place that help us with stuff like that.
So what would you say, though, Dave, to the guy or the girl that's listening, the couple that's listening, who's like, well, we don't have kids, or, well, I don't think it's really an issue. We're both fine. She does her thing. I do my thing on my phone. What ways might social media and technology be impacting them and their marriages without them even realizing it?
Well, I think there's positives and negatives to it, right? The device itself, social media itself, is not the enemy. It's how we leverage it that becomes the enemy. One of the things that I became aware of is there's a stat out that says the average American, notice I said American, the average American touches their phone 300 times a day.
Wow. What about Australians? How many times do they?
Yeah, how many
That's
times
like
Australians?
30 times a day.
No, it's not.
Take a zero off.
300 times a day.
300 times a day. Now, that's when we're checking things. That's when we're playing with our pop sockets. That's when we're taking it out of our pocket and putting it down. 300 times a day. And I always think to myself, how would my relationship with my wife be different if I held her hand or stroked her hair or something 300 times a day?
Right.
That would be a game changer. So I try to be super aware of stuff like that. So again, it can be a negative thing, but if we can turn it into a positive if we want to. I know for me, as a guy, one of my love languages is words of affirmation. And when Meg tweets about me or posts something online about me, that does our marriage a world of good. Like, I'm super thrilled at that moment. So there are ways that we can use it to stay more deeply connected. I even find it with my daughters. When, like, I follow all of their Instagram accounts, and it keeps me connected with what's going on. I look at their Instagram stories, and now I look at IGTV, and if my daughter's doing something at school and she posted online because she doesn't know any better, I can then have that conversation with her, which I otherwise would not have had with her. So I think there are ways where it can be impacted for positive and ways where it can be impacted for negative. We just have to be super aware of what we're doing, how we're doing it, and why we're doing it as well.
That word awareness, I think, is absolutely huge, because I've thought, like, if we had no context for phones whatsoever, let's say you're alien, you come down to Earth and you report back. Well, there's people and they're walking around and they all have these little boxes. And they're always looking down at their boxes. And then they're at restaurants and they're with other people and they're looking at boxes, and over their shoulder is a TV. And so it feels a little bit crazy, because I think that it is. And I think that's an issue. I don't think it's people's heart. I think it's an awareness of what's happening, because you say 300 times and I think, wow, I kind of can't believe that, but it's, wow, that's amazing though. It's about awareness of how much are we really on these things, right?
Yeah, totally. And so then it's just making, once you become aware of that, like that we're on social media for 2 hours a day, and when you make that switch and start to leverage technology for good rather than evil, I guess. But when you make that switch, it actually I feel like it means more, because it's the difference between deductive teaching and inductive teaching, right? So for me, when I realized that, I deduced that and went, this is like, I'm almost having an affair with my phone here. I need to stop this and start spending that time with my wife instead. You know, there's this book by a guy named Reggie Campbell called What Radical Husbands Do. And he says, for the first 5 minutes, stay within 5 feet of your wife. And that's one of those awareness things.
For the first 5 minutes when you get
so
home,
when the first 5 minutes when you get home, be 5 feet away from your wife. And so but when I read that, I was like, what do I do for the first 5 minutes? Well, I'm usually ending a phone call, walking in, ending a phone call, or I'm posting something, or I'm reading something. And so I barely look up to say, hey, babe, how you doing? How's your day? But now what I do is I sometimes will park around the corner from our house, finish whatever phone calls I have to make, then put my phone down or in my bag and drive in, and then I can just walk in and spend that 5 minutes 5 feet from her, and then I try to do the same thing with the girls.
Wow, that's terrific. We've talked about, Ted, a lot of times like that, or a handful of times on this podcast, like those first few minutes when you walk into the house are crucial in a marriage. Like there are 3 or 4, high impact or high possible tension points with your spouse. It's like when you wake up, when you leave the house, when you get home from work, and when you when you go to bed. And those are also moments we tend to choose to pick our phones up instead. Like all 4 of those are some of the bigger moments in our worlds where we're on our phones.
Yeah, the number one time couples are fighting is when they reconnect at the end of the day. And I'm wondering how much of that is, you've been on that thing all day, walk in. That was a habit that we had going into marriage pretty quickly, is not, and even with our kids, to not be on the phone when we're in the car with our kids. Yeah. That's been a rule, unless it's, our wife that calls or me that calls. And even when we come in at night, not to be on your phone, but it's one of those little rules which and when you break those kind of rules, they feel weird, don't they?
Yeah, it totally does. But I would ask you guys, like, how have you leveraged technology, not just social media, whatever sort of digital technology there is, whether it's Netflix or YouTube or Spotify, to make your relationship better? Like, have those things impacted you positively in any way?
Well, we have one Spotify account, so if Hudson's listening to it, then I get on my phone and I steal it, and then he can't listen to it anymore.
See, I think that's a good example. Like, we have one Audible account. And so when I buy a book, Meg reads it as well. And typically that didn't happen when we're reading hardcover physical books. Yeah. But now she reads the book while she's driving, and I'm reading it while I'm driving, and we have the conversation about the book. But usually it's about, hey, did you skip ahead? Because now I'm in a different spot. But that's a great example, right? Something like that can actually bring you together, leveraging technology.
Way to spin that, Dave. But yes, it can bring you together.
I think we have to be positive about technology.
Absolutely.
What about you, CJ?
Oh man, I mean, there are a few things we like to do, but we've done a few things recently. One is like try to go an entire day with just texting each other GIFs, like just to explain your day, what's going on.
GIFs.
Whoa,
what is it?
I've got a
GIF.
few opinions.
No, it's GIFs.
You know why it's GIF?
Because the creator of GIF said it was GIF.
What is the first word what does the G stand for? Graphic.
GIF.
G.
Hey, Dave.
GIF.
This might all get edited out, and I'm okay with that.
If you're listening to this podcast right now, you have an opinion about GIF or GIF, please write in.
So whether you call it GIF or GIF or GIF, as I've started to call it, because that way you just cover them.
Yeah, that's
We'll
good.
try to go like an entire day, just how's your day going, but just only in GIF forms throughout, until you get home. It's,
Hey,
it's
that's
kind of entertaining.
but that's
though.
fun, right? That's fun and entertaining, something that you guys can laugh about. And
Oh,
now
yeah.
you've got a great story
Yeah.
about. I love that. I think that's awesome.
What do you have, Ted?
Oh yeah, for us, texting's a great thing during
Yeah.
the day. It is, we'll connect and we need to do X, Y, Z, but it's usually something goofball. A lot of the times it's goofball, especially if there's something going on with the kids and you're like, it's been too heavy around our house, so let's send a gift.
Yeah.
I added a T.
Yeah, that's a.
A gift of the gift of the GIF.
So yeah, and there's just good times there.
Yeah.
It's just so that for us has been, I think if you back up 20 years ago and you say, what if you left that many notes throughout the day at your spouse's workplace? Like you couldn't do that.
Yeah,
you couldn't
totally.
do it. So I love the fact that we can connect that way.
Yeah, I do too.
Let me ask you guys a question though.
Yeah,
Okay,
bring it. Bring the hard
listen,
truth, Ashton.
let's just have the moment where I just am gonna rain on everyone's parade for a second.
Lord.
Do it.
Here's the thing. I can't stand it when people post about their spouse on social media. Here's why.
When Dave brought that up, I knew you were going to.
knew
have
I
a
was
problem
cringing
with it.
inside because here's the thing. Do you say that to her face? Do you say it to her face or do you just put it on social media? Which is
What
to everyone
sort of-
else's
hang
face.
on. I think we got to clarify what sort of post, because what I'm talking about is, if I take I'm
A gusher.
Oh no,
Like you're gushing about her on
but
social media.
she wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that for her either.
She wouldn't gush about you and you wouldn't gush to
Oh
her.
no, she would say, "Hey, my Dave just released a book and it's so
Okay,
good."
that's different. That's like being supportive
Yeah,
of your spouse.
yes.
The things don't, but doesn't it bug you when someone posts something on social media where
totally.
they're gushing
Especially-
about their
Ben,
spouse?
this is what
Wait, you don't like gushing?
Well, I think I'm picking up what Afton's putting down, because pastors especially are notorious for
They
this. Praise
love
Jesus for my hot wife.
They
I'm
love
like,
calling them hot.
Oh, that's so bad. Like,
Yes.
I just think that's, I would never do that. And if I did that, believe me, Meg would call me
Yeah.
and I would get a talking to.
I just always feel like when people do that, when they like gush about their spouse on social media, if they do it so much all the time, first of all, I unfollow them. Second of all, I'm like, why do you feel like you need to post it where everyone can see it? Why can't you write that in a note that just your spouse sees?
I mean,
Do you and Hudson celebrate Valentine's Day?
Sort of.
Yeah, see, I figured. Meg and I don't celebrate Valentine's Day.
Is it just a personality thing?
I think it's every day should be Valentine's Day is honestly what I think.
Me too.
And so the only time
That's not true. Afton.
the only,
Afton's on the other end of the spectrum. She doesn't think there should
no
ever
days
be.
should be Valentine's
Any
Day.
kind of show of affection, love,
Right.
hearts, flowers.
Oh, that's,
yeah.
that's so good. I will only quote unquote gush about Meg on social media when it's our anniversary.
Okay. Yeah.
And
okay. Acceptable.
even then, it's probably a big one. Like the last time I remember doing it was for our 20th wedding anniversary, and I posted a photo of her when we were got married on our wedding day, and a photo of her now, and I gushed a little bit. But I thought 20 years in, I deserve that.
you can gush once.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference is you tend to have the couples who are doing it, once a week or once every
Yes.
couple of weeks. And that's all you tend to see. Where the flip side of it is, when you're doing something like that once a year, and I know we're getting a little off track, but I think there's value in that because you're affirming your spouse in public. Like it's like affirming your spouse from a stage, and who doesn't love to be affirmed in front of other people?
Afton, that's the answer
Yeah,
to
that's
that
true.
question.
That's true.
I don't know.
See, I think there's so many other ways that we can leverage technology to build our relationship with our spouse. And a great one for me is, we travel quite a bit. Meg works, she works for a missionary arm of our church, and she travels all the time, and we get to FaceTime. Like, I've FaceTimed her on, I think she's been to all the continents in the past 2 years, she told me the other day. And I've FaceTimed her every time. And it's just a great way to stay connected, whereas in the past, we wouldn't have been able to do that. Probably wouldn't have been able to make phone calls. Probably had to use Morse code when we first got married, now that I think about it. But there's just ways that we can leverage technology to stay connected. Another really great way for us is, seriously, Netflix is a great thing for us. We watch Netflix shows together, we binge watch it together, and we still now talk about shows we watched 5-6 years ago. And then we, as part of our technology Sabbath on
Saturday,
Friday nights.
Saturday,
Friday nights for us is family movie night. And even though my oldest daughter is 17, we still have regular family movie night and we stream in a movie, like whatever the latest release is. So technology has done a lot to bring our family together.
So let's drill down, though, just a little bit. So we're talking about some of the positives, and I think all of us would say, yeah, these are great things. We definitely have some of those, pieces happening in our marriage. But I think there are some couples and some people who would say, hey, no, I think technology and social media is doing more to drive us apart than it is to build us. So what do you say to that spouse or that guy or that girl who's getting home and their spouse is always connected to social media or always, glued to their phones, and they're having a hard time connecting with their spouse who's chosen to be on their phone rather than, how do they approach that conversation to reconnect with their spouse?
Gosh, that could happen in a number of different ways, and it doesn't have to just be about technology, right? There's probably it could be online shopping, it could be shoe shopping, it could be drinking. There's so many different things that we may have to have those conversations, but I get that, for this conversation, technology is part of it. I think it's making people aware of some certain statistics. This is what I would do with Meg. That idea of 300 times a day we touch our phone. That idea that 2.5 hours a day we're always on social media. Like when I would talk to Meg about that, or when she's had to talk to me about it, it's the realization of the time that I'm wasting as opposed to the time that I'm using it to build something that makes me aware of the fact that I have to stop. So for me, it's just about have some statistics that will help arm you to have the conversation so that you're not asking your spouse to follow your rules. Right. You're giving them information that helps them make the decision. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Afton, Ted, have you ever realized you're investing a little too much time in your phone, or have either of your spouses ever had to be like, hey, all right, let's hang out?
I've never done anything wrong ever, so that's never happened to me.
You're right. I was really just asking Ted because I knew that, but I wanted to ease the...
But my spouse has. So usually when Hudson's on his phone and I wish we were hanging out, I'll just keep texting him until he responds to me.
Really?
Yeah, like if he's
How
like
many
in
texts
his
does it take?
like if he's in his office and I'm like in the living room and I want to watch TV, I'll just be like, "Hello, hi, are you coming? Are you on your way? What are you doing? What are you looking at?" And then eventually he comes out.
So let's break that down. You want to spend time with him by sitting in front of the TV.
Well, we're gonna hang out and watch something together.
So you're saying get off that screen, Hudson,
Yes.
and come and be with me in front of this screen.
That's right. Together.
All right.
The togetherness is the part
But
that's
you're
important.
together because you're texting each other, so you're still together.
But not if he's not texting me back.
I'm always going to have the positive spin.
Dave, here's a question I have. If every behavior has a payoff, like we don't do anything that there's not some kind of payoff with it, what's the payoff for people being on their phones and social media all the time? I mean, I've read stats about, that there's a little chemical jolt every time we look at our phone, like a brain, dopamine, different things. But why do you think, if everybody's doing it, why are we all doing it? Why is it such a deal?
I think, that's a huge cultural and societal question more than anything else, right? We do it because everybody else does it, but it's also become one of the ways that we communicate as a society now. We stay in contact with people. In the past, we would have maybe used had a phone conversation to do that, but now we text instead of having that conversation. So as to the why we do it, I think it is partly that dopamine hit that we get. I think part of it is marketing. We're told that we're missing out if we don't have this in our life. And side note, for me, that's why we have our technology Sabbath, is because we want to try to break that in our family to see that there's not a reliance on it. Personally, I think a big part of it is that it also becomes a way to enhance relationships. This is honestly how I feel about social media in general. And I have these conversations often where people are like, but here's a bad statistic, here's another bad statistic, here's a bad psychological statistic, here's a bad statistic from society about some violence that's happened as a result. But I always look at it from the point of view of it has enhanced so many relationships in my life. I'm in contact with people, and partly this is because I moved from Australia 10 years ago to America, yet I'm still in contact with so many friends and so many family members because of technology. Sure. So my daughter is growing up in a world where, she will say her best friend is this girl she's seen twice in 10 years. but they talk all the time. And we're like, well, why are you best friends with her? Why would you say that? Well, because she likes all of my Instagram posts and I like all of hers. And but beyond that, I also know they're having conversations, they're direct messaging each other, they're having video conversations as well. That's maintained that relationship. And so it's the same with me and my wife in our marriage. If I'm able to text my wife and say, hey, babe, I'm on my way home, shoot me over a list and I'll stop at the supermarket. That's so beneficial to her. And that's leveraging technology for the positive. Likewise, if I'm sitting in a meeting and, I'm not feeling the meeting and it's getting a bit boring. And then this happened to me yesterday. My phone buzzed. I looked at it and it was her.
Were you meeting with Andy?
I was in this one-on-one meeting with Andy, and
it wasn't that. But my phone buzzed, and Meg just said, "Hey, I love you," and that just gave me such a awesome. That's so good. I can get through this meeting. So we leverage it to grow relationships, to deepen relationships, more than we use it as a wedge to separate us. We have a family text going at the moment. We've had it going for a year. It's titled The Coolest Family. And there's a whole bunch of just ridiculous things in there, like, hey, yesterday it was, Dad, the Wi-Fi's not working. But I will always end stuff like that with a GIF. And that just, and what happens is everybody laughs, and I just feel like when we get home, it's a different environment because we've been connected all day. I'm not getting home and I don't get home and Meg says, tell me every second of every meeting you have and tell me about your whole day. She already knows because I've been keeping her informed. So I actually think I'm more in touch with her now because of technology, because of social media than I ever was before. And the other big thing for me is I'm leveraging social media as a tool to pass my faith on to my kids. I learned a couple of years ago that my kids are interested in all things church and faith related. But for me to sit down and have a conversation with them about it, it was not just time consuming. They kind of would get bored very, very quickly and start to drift off. So I just started to write it all down and put it into my Instagram feed as a devotion. And literally the reason I did it was I thought, long after I'm dead, my kids will be able to go to my Instagram account and learn everything their dad knew about Jesus. And so what's happened since then is my kids all read my devotions now. They wouldn't sit down and listen to me say it,
right?
But they read it and they like it, and then that fosters a conversation later on. So I'm leveraging technology, I'm leveraging social media, literally to pass my faith on to my kids, who may or may not have got it any other way.
Wow, that's awesome. And I'll go ahead and plug that because I follow that Instagram. And basically, if you visit Instagram.com/AussieDave, AUSSIE Dave, you'll see that Dave posts these daily images and devotionals, and it's a really, really cool follow. So definitely check that out. We'll have that in our show notes. But as we get closer to wrapping up, I guess the word I keep coming back to is something that Ted said toward the beginning, that this whole conversation is just all about awareness. It's like you have to be aware about how you're using your phone, how you're using technology. Are you allowing it to separate you and your spouse? Are you leveraging it to bring you and your spouse and your kids together?
Yeah.
As we get closer to wrapping up, do you have any final thoughts here, Dave?
Yeah, look, it's exactly what you said about Ted. It's all about awareness. It's about being aware what your spouse likes and what your spouse doesn't like. It's about being aware of how often you are on the phone and how often you are not on the phone. How often you guys are leveraging technology for good and how often it's driving a wedge between the two of you. I think everything boils down to awareness, but I've learned so many things about my wife based on what she posts on social media, what she's following on Pinterest, and I've gotten anniversary and Christmas and birthday gift ideas because I know what she's posted on certain platforms.
That's
and channels.
genius. That was worth the price of this podcast.
So especially as guys, it's sometimes we don't take hints very well. Meg will always say, I've been telling you this for like 8 months. Telling me what? I don't know. But I can check. I can find out if I do the research. So it's all about being aware of using it for a positive outcome and not letting it drive a wedge between you. Yeah.
So good. So good.
So Dave, Ted, Afton, we always like to close our podcast with one simple thing. And Dave, this idea is like, hey, we've talked about it a lot here.
Yeah.
What is one simple thing that you think couples can do to leverage technology and social media to impact their marriage? Would it be something to help them connect more or disconnect from technology to reconnect with each other? It could be anything. So what is one simple thing that any couple could walk away and start doing this week?
My one simple thing for couples when it comes to technology is you use social media to just gush on your spouse, just to really love on them.
Shaking my head.
Post
how
about
much-
your spouse
Yeah,
daily.
post photos of
and-
them while they're sleeping.
Yeah.
Especially with feet. Those
Yeah.
have got to be your favorite,
And
right?
tag Afton and everyone.
That would be so
Hashtag
good.
gushers.
Hey, you know, I would say this: when you, first of all, there'd be a couple. Does it have to be one? Like when you say one, I feel like that's so.
You know
like,
what,
I wanna
Dave?
say
One,
so
it's
many
supposed
more.
to be tangible for a person to do and not feel
Hey, okay, so
overwhelmed.
here would be
So
the
maybe
one.
pick one.
Okay, so here's the one thing that I would say. I would challenge everybody listening to this podcast and everybody sitting around this table to do this week. To go 24 hours without your phone, like any phone, the whole family, put all your phones away in a basket, put it up on top of the shelf, and then just spend time together. Like, do that. That's what I would suggest you do.
I love it.
Could you do it after?
Do you have an Apple Watch?
No.
Oh, okay.
And
so
I don't.
when your phone's away, it's away.
Yes, 100%. And that's why we actually talked about Apple Watches, and Meg said, why would I give you an Apple Watch when that's another way for you to be connected? And I'm like, I totally agree. And that comes back to the awareness thing. I'm aware that she doesn't want me to have that. Because she wants me to have time where I'm not connected. So I would say that I challenge everybody listening to this podcast to spend 24 hours with nobody in the house having phones. If you're just a young married couple like you guys are,
Yes.
put the phones away and just spend some time talking rather than texting.
Wow.
I can do that. I love to do it. I do it every Sunday.
Well,
Yeah,
you've
you're
got-
already.
I'm ready to do it. I already
doing it.
have No Technology Sunday. It's
Yeah.
really catchy.
I'll be honest. I think it'd be a challenge for Terry and I for sure.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
You can watch TV still, though, sometimes.
No. I'm talking about portable devices,
Yeah.
iPads, iPhones, that sort of thing.
I mean, it
can
is
do
just we could do it, but it's so part of our routine. It really, really is, Dave. I mean,
Yeah.
it is just all right. It's Friday night. You know, we're recording here on a Friday, and we'll go home, watch the Braves game, and put her on our phones and be scrolling on social media. And it's how we unwind. And that's not bad in and of itself. But when we
Correct.
do that a lot, I'm probably unaware of some of the ways it impacts our relationship
Yeah.
as we're not talking to each other very much the last couple hours.
And I would argue you won't become aware until you put the phone away for 24 hours and make that a regular routine. That's what we've done. And same with what Ted said. Sometimes it's like pulling teeth. Not from the kids, from me, because I'm like, no, I've got to get this last thing out. I've got this, and there's so many times when we're during that 24-hour period where I think of something that go, oh, that's a great tweet. And my instinct is
You have to use a pen and paper and you have to write it down. And
It's
then
so-
you don't know how many characters it is. You have to count it yourself.
And that's really what the problem is.
but
here.
you don't become aware of how addictive it is until you stop it. And so I would say, yeah, put it away for 24 hours. See what could happen.
And I guess the other word that keeps coming to my mind is balance.
Yeah.
Like all of this is in moderation. All of this is part of a
Totally.
balanced life. Like
Yeah.
we're not saying it's all bad. We're not saying it's all good.
I agree.
But it is just about making sure, like you said a bit ago, like, hey, you're doing this with your family to make sure you're not dependent on
Yeah.
it. It's just a regular habit to make sure that, hey, we're living a
I
balanced
agree.
life here.
And the reality is we live in a world of technology and digital devices and things, right? And it's like gravity. We can try and fight it, but we're never going to win. I often use this metaphor. I don't know if it's a metaphor or a symbol or a simile.
Simile.
But I say it's kind of like we could go to the ocean in Australia, to Bells Beach, which is where I grew up. We go to Bells Beach, Australia, where there's 6-foot waves. And we could walk out, 20 feet into the water and just stand there and get pummeled by these massive waves and get knocked over by and get injured and everything. Or we could get a surfboard, paddle out, and then ride that wave into and have an awesome time. Technology is like that in my mind. We can stand and go,
great.
oh, it's all bad. We've got to stand against it, but we're going to get knocked over because our kids are growing up with it. That you can't barely do anything, even order a coffee these days without technology. So I say, get on a surfboard, and just ride that wave and have fun. Ride that wave with your spouse.
Man, Dave is so
Ride that
cool.
wave.
Yeah. That was
Or
good.
boogie board that way.
Right.
Like if you haven't, if you're
Well,
like
yes,
a tamer.
if you're less adventurous.
you could
adventurous.
Boogie board that-
boogie board that way.
Boogie board that way.
Or body surf that wave, whichever. It doesn't matter.
Right.
It doesn't matter. It all works.
Love it.
Well, this has been a great conversation. Dave, we so appreciate you joining us for this. And again, if you want to check out what Dave's up to, you can visit his website. That's daveadamson.tv. And like I mentioned a few minutes ago, his Instagram is a killer follow. So that's Instagram.com/AussieDave. That's where you can follow his daily devotionals. And if you love those, you'll also love his book, which is what, Ted?
It's he,
No,
Chasing the Light, 90 devotions and photos to grow your faith.
Whoa, thanks for telling us the title,
Yeah.
Dave.
Thanks for that, Ringo. Totally.
That was way more British than Australian. I gotta get back. I can jump high like the kangaroos. Okay, that's better. Okay.
I can teach you all how to speak. I can teach you all how to speak Australian. All you need to do is say rise, R-I-S-E. Say that.
Rise.
Right.
Rise.
Rise.
Don't try to have
Okay,
it. Just
okay.
don't try to have an Australian
Oh,
accent.
okay.
R-I-S-E.
Rise.
Rise.
Up.
Up.
Lights, like the turn a light on.
Lights.
Light.
Say those 3 words. Go.
Rise up lights. Rise up lights. Rise up
lights.
What do
lights.
Australian men
Rise
shave with?
Rise up lights.
Rise of
Rise
lights. Rise of lights.
Rise of light.
Did it sound like I said?
That was worth
Rise
the
of
whole
lights.
podcast.
100%. CJ, what do Australian men shave with?
Rise of blades. Rise up lights.
You're
Rise
trying
up.
to
No,
say
no.
razor blades
I know.
now.
Well, now it's hard because I know what.
Rise up.
Rise up
li-
lights. Rise up
Ted,
lights.
go. What do Australian men
Rise
shave?
up lights.
Rise up lights.
Now everyone's
Well-
in their cars saying raise up lights.
Totally. Rise up lights.
Yes.
That is fantastic.
Well, this has been way too much fun. Dave, we'll definitely have to have you on another episode sometime soon. But for now, we would love for you, as we're wrapping up this conversation, Afton, what do you want to hear from our listeners this week when it comes to technology and social media?
Oh, what I want to hear from our listeners this week is, 2 things. One, let us know what you do on social media or with technology to make your relationship awesome with your spouse, like the GIFs, like the texting,
the gifts.
like the Audible account, like the Spotify stealing.
Yep.
Or 2, let us know how your 24-hour no technology Sunday goes.
Both of you.
Yeah,
Just kidding.
that's great.
No, it's going to be.
It doesn't
Everybody's
have to be
gonna
a
do
Sunday,
it.
but we should probably
Yeah.
just start tagging it No Technology Sunday because it's really catchy.
I love that.
I think
Yeah.
Friday night, Saturday, no technology, Friday night, Saturday night, or that hashtag, whichever.
No Technology Sunday.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And we really would love to hear your thoughts on this. And the best way to do that is to find us on Facebook, Instagram, or our website. That's facebook.com/marriedpeople, Instagram.com/married_people, and our website is marriedpeople.org/podcast. You can leave your thoughts there as well. Well, thank you guys so much for having this conversation, and thank you for joining us for the Married People Podcast. We hope that today's episode helps you realize that marriage is a little easier than you think. And if you enjoyed today's episode, we would love for you to subscribe to the podcast through your Apple Podcast app or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And while you're there, leave us a review. And finally, for more great books and resources, including a link to Dave Adamson's book, Chasing the Light, visit our website, marriedpeople.org/podcast. Until next time, I'm CJ,
I'm Afton.
I'm Ted.
I'm Dave.
and thank you for listening.